WHIV LPFM in New Orleans. We are Radio NOLA HIV with programming. That's right, programming dedicated to human rights and social justice. WHIVFM.org. We honor independent voices. We are not a radio station with a mission. No, we are a mission with a radio station, and that is to end all wars. Hello, my name is Dr. Mark Allenberry. I am an infectious disease doctor here in New Orleans, Louisiana, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to COVID Noise Filter, the daily hour, or now it's the every other day hour long show that we stream live on Facebook and on YouTube, and then play the next day on the community radio station WHIV. So no matter how you guys are tuned in, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm sorry that we got a little bit of a late start as the connection to our streaming software was not working, and it took a while to get to get logged on. Doc Griggs is super excited to do a show. I'm not sure where he is right now. I'm sure he will probably join us. He's in a meeting right now, but texted me repeatedly today, letting me know that he was very enthusiastic about doing a show today. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. There's a lot of information. We learned a lot. For those of you that joined our show on Saturday, we're so grateful to have you there. We had a very, very positive response from that show. But given that we missed the Friday show, I felt that was very important for us to report on the Washington Post story about this so-called leaked slide deck from the CDC that I think was incredibly important for us to chat about. As always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat box. We'd love to answer your questions. We always, as always, please subscribe to NoiseFilter, our COVID NoiseFilter, our podcast. We would appreciate that as well. So that being said, there's so much to talk about, and I am super excited to jump right into it. Again, please like and share this stream, as this is the best way for people to get to know that this show is live, and we want as many people, given that there's such a huge swath of our population that does not believe in science or is so prone to misinformation. It's important that as many people get this stream. Sharing is caring, so please share this stream. We'd love to get as many people on board as possible. So with that said, let's go ahead and just get started here. First, starting looking at the stories, some of the top stories of the day. The EU has passed the U.S. in COVID-19 vaccinations. Inoculations in the 27 member countries are at a sustained pace, while America's effort has stalled. The EU has boosted its figure by 9 percentage points. I think that's important. It's an important story for us to recognize that at least we are seeing vaccination rates around the world getting more and more people are being vaccinated, and that we get as many people vaccinated as possible. So it's nice to see that. I too wish that the vaccination rates would be here in the U.S. We would see more of it, because remember, when more and more people are not being vaccinated, that affects those of us who are vaccinated, because their lack of vaccinations puts us in a place where in Louisiana, although I agree with this mandate, but now we have a vaccine mandate in Louisiana. Not a vaccine mandate, I'm sorry, a mask mandate in Louisiana, largely was going to step out to do show, cannot talk in meetings, still going. It was wow. All right. Okay. So I think I just got a message from Doc Riggs saying he's not going to do the show with us today, but we'll see. I'm getting a lot of text messages right now, so I'm going to try to put that on the quiet. Before, let me just kind of make sure that he's in or he's out in meeting still. Was going to. All right. Let's carry on. All right. Show must go on, as they say. So let's move on with the show. What else do we have? Next story of the day here, and we have a lot of stories to be good. As expected, the U.S. administration announced a number of new steps to increase vaccinations. This includes requiring all employees and on-site contractors to be vaccinated or face strict protocols, expanding paid leave to get vaccinated, urging states to give up to $100 to people who do get vaccinated. They also want school districts nationwide to host at least one pop-up vaccine clinic to get more kids 12 and older vaccinated. So now, these are all really good. I think these are all great measures. I think that these are measures that I wish that had been taken a little bit earlier. I wish that these are measures that should have been done earlier. But the fact that they're being done now, I think, is a positive thing. And I think it's great that this is finally going down. But I hope it's not too little too late. I think that people already made up their minds with this sort of stuff. But every little bit helps, and that's probably the most important thing. This is important. I heard about this over the weekend as well. For family members, Israel will be the first to start offering a third shot of Pfizer vaccine to people over 60. Now, that'll be really interesting to see what happens. So this is not people that are immunocompromised. These are a third shot to people who are over the age of 60. The president will be the first to get the booster today. The health ministry has twice reported a drop in the vaccine's efficacy against infection and a slight decrease in its protection against severe disease. Pfizer says it could apply for U.S. emergency authorization for booster shots as early as August. So we are aware that Pfizer will be applying for booster shots. In the rundown today, I'll be talking about what the FDA is currently saying about what the FDA is currently saying about these booster shots. And of course, right now it looks like that they are not necessary. But I think that that's going to change. The Pfizer came out last week with some internal data. Jesus, my goodness. All right, I'm going on. Sorry, guys. There, I'm going on silent. The FDA did come back with some data. Sorry, the Pfizer came back with data last week that showed that there was a 5-fold increase in those that are aged 18 to 65. 18 to 55 had a 5-fold increase in antibody response, and those that were ages 65 and older had an 11-fold increase. So it will be interesting to see with us starting to get into August, and we'll look at the moment. But as we're starting to approach August, the numbers are looking really, really. We are going to see August is going to be a tough month for us, as I've said repeatedly, and I am fearful that with August being so hot in terms of cases, that we are going to obviously see increases in mortality as well. And I would wonder if that is going to help push the FDA into thinking these third so-called booster shots. The fact that Israel's doing it is really good, because it will be showing us that, and we'll be able to see real data, and probably will know in a couple months, if not a couple months, probably a couple months, how well that decision process actually turned out. All right. So this is good. One last holdout will start accepting the vaccines into its country. Burundi's government will allow them, but will not take responsibility for any side effects that they might cause. This was announced the same day by neighboring Tanzania launched its vaccination campaign, retreating from its former president's denial of the pandemic. This leaves Eritrea, one of the world's nations, as the only African country that has not accepted the vaccines. Wow. All right. The smiles at Walt Disney. On another note, segueing into the most perfect segue, the smiles at Walt Disney Florida and Disneyland in California will once again be hidden behind masks. The parks have gone back to requiring all guests to wear face masks indoors as of today, and vaccination status does not matter. Indoors also means transportation, like buses and monorails. And you know how I feel about that. I think that is a very, very, very positive thing. All right. Continuing on, there are some signs that vaccinations in the U.S. are now going up, and we're going to talk about that. That's in the rundown today. Now that the Delta variant surge has become undeniable. 816,203 doses were administered Saturday, the fifth straight day the CDC recorded more than 700,000 shots in arms. Saturday was also the thing in a row that the 7-day average of people getting their first shots in. So this is good news as people are starting to see exactly how many people are getting this Delta variant. They are now going and getting vaccinated, which is incredibly important. Hello, Sarah and Terry, some of my favorite people in the whole world. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Now, unfortunately, remember, people are getting vaccinated today. That it's going to take at least 6 weeks for them to become so-called fully vaccinated, right? It's still going to take a long time to get there. So, but listen, I'll take it. If you want to get vaccinated and we can vaccinate you now, let's do it. But also recognize that even though we are seeing upticks in vaccinations, certainly we've seen here in Louisiana, if we can get as many people vaccinated as possible, that's great, okay? But also recognize that it's going to take 6 weeks before you're fully vaccinated. It's very, very likely that we're going to be over this Delta hump because this burns very, very brightly, but then it's going to burn itself out. It's going to find all the so-called human wood that fire could potentially use, and it's going to burn through it very quickly. So again, if you get vaccinated, please get vaccinated now. If you are unvaccinated or if you know anybody in your families or friends or whatever that are unvaccinated, please make sure that they're masked regularly, no matter where they do. We will hopefully start to see more and more mask mandates emerge out of states, and it will be important for people to recognize that at this point, the only protection they have are the regular non-pharmacological interventions that we typically think about, which is distance, masking, and stay away, from crowds as much as possible. All right, moving on. The most dangerous virus that we have right now is this virus of misinformation. The amount of misinformation that we see right now is stunning, and to see in Europe these protests against the mandatory vaccinations are really tremendous, and I just understand. I can understand if you don't want to be vaccinated. Sure, don't vaccinate, but you also have to recognize that you can't engage in life. You cannot go to the movies. You can't go to restaurants. If people businesses are saying that don't want you to be there because of your unvaccinated status, that's great. Don't get vaccinated. But then for you to also have the gall to think that you could just also saunter into a restaurant or to a public transportation and also remain unvaccinated really is just, it's galling. And this is really something that we see specifically with the anti-vax community. So more businesses are also turning to vaccine mandates. Disney and Walmart announced Friday mandates for some of their employees, and for Disney, it's all salaried and non-union hourly employees. For Walmart, it's all corporate staff members and regional managers, and they will join companies like Google, Facebook, Uber, and the Washington Post, to which I say congratulations to them. Not sure how this is going to help vaccinations go up, but Pfizer and Moderna have raised the prices of their vaccines in their latest contracts to the European unions, and it's not by a bit. It's a 25% increase for Pfizer and 13% for Moderna. Wow. But apparently these increases still leave the price lower than what was previously agreed upon. Okay? There, comment, but no comment. All right. How come what is said about the United States is so frequently at odds with other countries? Our finding, Israel's director of public health services said on Face of the Nation that Israel, which vaccinated its population early and often, found that about 50% of people testing positive right now were fully immunized. Not only that, but there's evidence that the vaccinated are not spreading the virus frequently or widely, which is great, good news, which runs counter to the CDC, which said that vaccinated should stay masks. Indeed, they did. So in Israel, 80% of vaccinated individuals who have been infected have zero contacts confirmed to have contracted COVID-19. To be clear, this means that vaccinated people can and do infect other people, but Israel has found their ability to do so with 50% or vaccinated. So let me explain what that large mumbo jumbo was about. Essentially, for some reason, what we are seeing here in the U.S., that people who are fully vaccinated do need to remain masked because they do transmit virus pretty readily. But what we're seeing in Israel, however, is that that was not the case. About 50% of the cases were not transmitting to other individuals. That largely is a mystery. It's hard to kind of wrap my head around that. The idea behind that is difficult, but science is sloppy. We hear about the so-called scientific process. We know about diseases largely because we've been studying them for years. This is a disease that's new, and we are seeing how this disease unfolds, emerges live in front of our eyes. And this is the sort of stuff that we see that sometimes we're getting contradictory data. All right, in the interim, let's do a quick question here. Mignon says, I keep hearing that breakthrough cases are rare, yet many of my friends who have been vaccinated and are mask wearers are testing positive. I don't understand. So that is the question of the moment, is what is happening there. I am mostly this was something that we saw over over the weekend, when we saw that the CDC had reported that the cases of breakthrough infections are rare. They're not rare whatsoever. I am hearing about them pretty regularly. So we are seeing large amounts of cases that are breakthrough cases. And why are cases? Because what we've seen is the vaccine was very good at preventing infections with the alpha variant and with the wild type variant. We know that it protects from getting infected in the first place. What we're seeing now is that people who are vaccinated, they are no longer protected from getting the infection. They can get the infection if exposed, but what vaccine does do is protect against severity of illness as well as mortality. Let's get to that in a second. So why have we lost that level of protection? I don't know. That's a very good question. It could be that the virus is partly mutating, and right around the corner we see that Lambda is right around the corner, and the Lambda virus variant is also somewhat very problematic in that it could be vaccine evasive as well. In other words, it could skirt around the immune system. So it could be that Delta is the first virus, the first variant that we're seeing in which there is some form of a vaccine evasiveness, if you will, with respect to being able to penetrate and through to infect you. If you do get infected, people are either mostly asymptomatic or they have somewhat kind of like a common cold-like symptoms. The old symptoms that we saw don't really play a role, like the loss of taste or sense of smell or what have you. Fever, these sorts of things, we're not seeing as much as we did. So what the mRNA vaccines are good for now is preventing against severity of disease and also preventing against mortality. And that's really important. The people who are in the hospitals now, and again, we've said this before, this vaccine will prey on those that are unvaccinated. Guarantee, full stop. This vaccine on those that are unvaccinated. This vaccine will prey, and if you're unvaccinated, please go get vaccinated now. Again, it takes about 6 weeks to be fully vaccinated, but if we had started 6 weeks ago, you'd be vaccinated now, right? But it's important, and mask wearing is incredibly important as well. So let's segue into the Delta, and this was an article in the New York Times called the Delta variant. So I'm just going to skim through this and try to find things that we don't know already. So we know that the spread of super contagious Delta variant has prompted new restrictions around the world. It is more aggressive, much more transmissible. Again, this is largely because for everyone, and look at it, is one of the most infectious respiratory viruses that we know of, and I've seen in my 20-year career. Can I also say that I also met a 20-year career as well, and Dr. Walensky is the head of the CDC. More power to you, Dr. Walensky. I think that is so cool. Your career is incredibly admirable, and I'm so happy that that was a career path that you've been able to take. All right, continuing on, we do know that the internal CDC document, which which we talked about. It was obtained by the time. So the Delta was as transmissible as the chicken pox. So that's important. Although the vaccines continue to provide strong protection against severe disease and death, fully vaccinated people can be infected by and transmit the Delta. So this is incredibly important. Again, people who are vaccinated can get infected and can transmit the Delta virus. All right. This week, these observations prompted the CDC to change recommendations, which we know of. Okay. So what I say before we continue on, they're citing the rise of Delta, the dearth of vaccines, and the high rates of community transmission in many parts of the world. Also encouraged fully vaccinated people to continue wearing masks. First identified in India, it is one of several variants of concern. We know that. The U.S. responsible for more than 80% of infections in the U.S. and it is fueling new states with low vaccination rates, mostly ours in the state of Louisiana. We've talked about this as well. They've added to this here by now stating that, of course, we know that the y-axis here looks at mortality. So the higher you are on this y-axis, the more likely you are to die. So bird flu, H5N1 here, most mortality, the virus that causes the most mortality, Ebola, MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, also coronavirus, by the way, SARS, also coronavirus. So look how many coronaviruses are incredibly deadly. Now, the lower you are, the less likely you are to cause mortality. But as you move down this x-axis, the most infectious you are. So you could see measles is the most infectious virus that we know of. But fortunately, it does not cause much in the form of mortality. Chickenpox, not at all. Here you see the Delta variant lives in this kind of this area right here. So on the upper limits of normal, you can see that it exceeds the infectiousness of chickenpox. It says here that's more transmissible than Ebola or smallpox and has contagiousness as much as chickenpox. So really, the Delta virus is really something that is really the most consequential of the coronaviruses that we've seen. We're going to talk a bit about the vaccinations here in the U.S. Here they were talking about roughly 60% of American adults have been fully vaccinated. So this is good. If you're not vaccinated, please take Delta variant seriously, Dr. Walensky says. Also, as a side note, there has been an 18-month life expectancy. We did talk about that. In terms of disparities, Black and Latino people have disproportionately affected by the coronavirus. Of course, in terms of infection rates, higher rates of infection and mortality, Black and Hispanic individuals. And unfortunately, in terms of vaccination, communities of color have now borne the brunt of the COVID-19. So still sticking with some more interesting elements of this article. Let's see what we've got. So why are people so worried about Delta? It's largely due to the fact that the people who are infected with Delta may carry 1,000 times more virus for a longer period of time. So that's pretty remarkable. Other evidence suggests the variant may also be partially evade the immune system. So that's also, we have not seen that a whole lot. But and here again, this is the New York Times saying the variant may partially evade the immune system. And I think that what they're saying there is what I was referring to a moment ago with respect to you can now get infected, whereas in the past it did not. You were immune to getting infected with the alpha variant or the wild type variant. The other thing too is that certain monoclonal antibody treatments are less effective. They're just less effective, and that is also one of the tools that we use for people that are in the hospital. It is likely more severe as well. Where is it spreading? It's spreading to 182 countries. It's spreading all through the U.S. as well. We'll show a map of that as well. Delta is very serious. Does Delta cause different symptoms? The answer is yes, it does. Although Dr. Osterholm here says we're waiting for good data. Sure. They say it's not clear yet. I think it's pretty clear in terms of at least those individuals that have mild cases. Those are cases that we have not quite seen because it was so dramatic last year. But here, headache, sore throat, runny nose are not frequently reported symptoms, with fever, cough, and loss of smell less common. So at this point, here you have Dr. Rasmussen saying, "I'll wait for published data before she makes a decision." I think this is fair. The fact that COVID is generally associated with a wide variety of symptoms, it's hard to say if it's truly unusual or if this is anecdotal. So that's fair enough. I believe that it does cause different symptoms as well, and it's changed as well. Let's see what else they're saying here. If I'm vaccinated, can I transmit Delta to others? Well, as we know, the answer to that is for sure. We saw that last week with the CDC leak that we saw last week that was published by the Washington Post. Will Delta return us to last year's pandemic peak? I strongly believe that we will see that. But let's see what they say. They say case numbers remain far below last winter's peak. Experts do not expect to see them rise that high again. I think we're not going to see another big national surge in the U.S. That may be the case, and that was last month. Last month would be July, so okay. However, Delta is having outbreaks in areas where vaccination rates are low, and I think that's what we're going to see. So it could be that we are not going to see same rates, but it's gonna get high globally. Here in the U.S., because we do have such a high number of people who are vaccinated, it may not necessarily be as high, but I think we are going to see large rates of cases. We'll go over those numbers in just a quick second. So just catching up on some of the comments here. It says, can we say the term breakthrough is simply another way of identifying the remaining percentage of a vaccine that is not effective? At least at 94% efficacy, the remaining 6% is ineffective, thus causing breakthrough infections due to a select group of vaccinated people. You know, it's a fair question you're asking, Fedi, and the idea is that I think that we're seeing more than the 6% of people. I mean, there are people who are making the arguments that is, let's say 90, you know, let's use your example, 94% efficacy, that what we're seeing now is this 6%. But that 6% just seems like it's a lot more than 6%. I think we're seeing breakthrough infections for what I had described earlier. I think that the 6% that even though there is a 6%, I think that what we are seeing in terms of cases, of breakthrough cases, to me seems more than what would it be expected than just the 6%. And that's, again, because I think that there, to a certain degree, that there has been skirting of the immune system. And again, the vaccine at this point is not preventing. It prevents against infection, yes, by threefold compared to people who aren't vaccinated. But it used to be that it was the protection against infection was much higher against other strains such as the alpha strain or the wild type strain as well. What about the new variant that was found in Florida? I don't know about it. I can't click on the link that you provided, but I was going to be talking about the Florida in just a moment, and just what a hot mess Florida is in so many ways. But all right, anyway, getting back to our stories here. The U.S. reaches a 70% milestone for adults, but it's a month behind President Biden's goal. So what are we seeing now? About 70% of U.S. adults have at least gotten one shot of the COVID vaccine. So this is why we're not going to see probably as high a peak with COVID, but COVID will find, the Delta variant will find those people that are unvaccinated, no question. But we're at least at a point where 70% have gotten one vaccine. Dr. Paul Offit, who's a very, very well-known vaccinologist, says we need to have at least 80% of the population vaccinated to truly have some form of herd immunity. And again, 80% vaccinated is what we need. So hopefully we are going to get there. All right. So here is in this CNN has this great section called Latest on COVID-19 Pandemic in the U.S. Less than 1% of fully vaccinated people experience a breakthrough COVID-19 analysis finds. Okay, so I clicked on this because I wanted to read more. Less than 1% of fully vaccinated people experience a breakthrough infection, according to Kaiser Family Foundation. I have a hard time believing this because it seems to me that there's a lot going back to Fetty, what you were asking. Also, more than 80% of cases and more than 95% of hospitalizations and deaths have been amongst unvaccinated. So this seems like a very, very low number, largely due to what the 1% of vaccinated are experiencing breakthrough. To me, it just seems as though I'm hearing so much more than either 1% or 6%. And I'm hearing so much more about it either in my social circles, in my friend circles, or just I'm reading about it. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around that, but we'll see as the data comes back in. Let's see. COVID-19 vaccine continue to rise in the U.S. Here's a look at the latest numbers. So let's look at some numbers here. Vaccination rates have increased in the last 2 weeks by 56% nationally. So that's great. On Sunday, the U.S. reported about 816,000 shots in arms. That's great. That's up. Current 662,000. I remember when it was up to like 1.5 million or something. According to CDC, about 50% of the U.S. population is fully vaccinated. So that's the number we should be thinking about 50%. So we need about 80% from, according to what Dr. Paul Offit said a moment ago, that we need about 80% to be quote unquote, have herd immunity. Now, again, the important thing here to consider and for us to know, is for us to get from 50 to 80% is super important. But again, even at 50%, that 50% that's vaccinated is going to likely prevent this Delta from exceeding some of the high numbers that we saw in January as well. Of course, the two states with the lowest percentage of population vaccinated are Alabama with 34% and Mississippi at 35%. And I am going to leave those comments untouched. We pick on Alabama and Mississippi so much in Louisiana. All right. The best way to protect children is to get more eligible people vaccinated. Dr. Francis Collins, again, the director of NIH, said the best way to protect children against COVID-19 is for more people eligible to be vaccinated to get vaccinated. Talked about that over and over again, how important it is. He also was encouraged by increases in vaccinations over the last 2 weeks, especially in Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Florida, which are being hit so hard by Delta. So I think that that's important. I think that's great news. There currently isn't evidence that the U.S. needs to proceed with COVID-19 booster shots, Dr. Collins says. So we talked about this at the opening of the show, that Pfizer is going to be submitting today their data. Again, their data showed that between the ages of 18 and 55, there was a 5-fold increase in antibody response or antibody titers after a third booster shot, and then there was a 11-fold increase in those adults who were over the age of 65. So that's really, really good news. So here he says that there's no evidence that the United States needs to go ahead with booster shots, although this is something that we looked at almost daily. Well, we're certainly looking at it almost daily. I heard the FDA oversees this, and they're going to be gathering data from both the U.S. learned in places like Israel and the UK. I would say now that there is not evidence that we need to go ahead with boosters in the U.S., but there's an ongoing debate. Let me just be clear that actually the existing approved vaccines in the U.S., Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, do have high efficacy against Delta. Again, the efficacy comes in the form of symptom severity and mortality. Asked what the harm was in moving forward, Collins said that they just didn't want to do the thing that's going to be most helpful for people, and also recognize there's a worldwide shortage of vaccines. So that's good to see that they're considering that. FDA will work towards full vaccine approval as rapidly as possible. I just did a radio interview just a moment ago, right before I jumped on air, and is the most common question that I get when I'm being interviewed on the radio is, why have we not approved or fully approved the vaccines? That's a really good question. I have that same question as well. I would love to know that, and we don't, but here is what they say here. Dr. Peter Marks at the FDA said in an interview that they are working towards getting a fully fully approved as soon as possible. I can't speak to a date when we intend to have this done, but I can say is that we're going to move with due diligence to get the review done with our usually high quality. Well, you've got hundreds of millions of people who've been vaccinated. So really, guys, like, yo, yalla, as my father would say, chop, chop, let's go. What are you guys waiting for? Marx also explained the difference between what is required for emergency use authorization, which all vaccines currently have, and full approval. In terms of pages to review, the change in the order of magnitude, it's going from tens of thousands of pages to hundreds of thousands of pages. Okay, yalla. You guys are big pharma. You could make it happen. I guarantee you they've got it. And you guys are the FDA. You're going to tell me that you don't have people there that can read this stuff? Of course you do. This is a global pandemic. This is the most urgent medical crisis, public health crisis, economic and cultural crisis. How is it that you are not moving forward on this? Yalla already. Chop, chop. All right. Manufacturing for full approval has to be much more well described and detailed than the EUA. All right. Whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Here's what it's like. It's a lot of blah, blah, blah. Just go ahead and just make it happen already, y'all. Okay. It's important. This time it really, really does count. Okay. What else we have? Moving on to the next story. Department of Homeland Security said misinformation is in part to blame for COVID-19 reticence that exists amongst DHS, Department of Health, Homeland Security employees, Homeland Security employees, misinformation. I don't know if I should be shocked or not. We've seen reticence in certain quarters. We're working through, we're educating and informing people. Misinformation is one of the challenges that we are overcoming, and we're very focused on it. He said in a wide-ranging interview with Andrea Mitchell. The department is working on with tech companies to strengthen legitimate use of social media platforms and prevent harm from occurring. All right, chop, chop already. Again, how is it that we are in August, a year and a half later, and we're still reading about this right now? My goodness. So hard sometimes for me to read some of these stories. German will begin offering COVID-19 booster vaccines to people at risk starting in September. With the option of a booster vaccination in September, we want to provide the best possible protection for groups at risk. They'll be getting 1 or 2 mRNA, so that's great. And do we know who they're going to be giving it to? I think they are giving it to at risk. So I don't know what at risk. I don't know if that's elderly or not. So I don't know. All right. Some states are working to prevent COVID-19 vaccine mandates. Can you believe that? States are working to prevent, like, we live in a time where the denial of climate change is so reticent. I mean, it's so readily available that we can just, yes. We live in a day where gun violence, right? And then there's Second Amendment rights where people still want to get, and they're still pushing guns on people. But then all of a sudden we have a vaccine, and we have states now that are preventing vaccine mandates. Here in Louisiana, we have, and in the South, as a result of these odious organizations like ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which writes model legislation for lawmakers across the world, the country, and they essentially just write the laws, and all the lawmakers have to do, it's like playing Mad Libs. You just fill in the blanks, right? And what we are seeing now is strengthening of laws against women for reproductive rights, loosening of gun laws, restrictions of voting rights being taken away, especially here in the South. This so-called non-permitted, non-concealed carry. In other words, people can just walk around and carry guns with them. And if you read the news, if you're here in Orleans, we saw that there was massive violence on Bourbon Street again. And then now, again, our lawmakers and our lawmakers. Anyway, so now our lawmakers are making it so that vaccine mandates don't exist, which is, again, this is the United States 2021. As COVID-19 cases surge, the federal government and private employers are requiring their workers to show proof of vaccination. Some states, however, are not just ordering more precautions, but already moving to stop vaccine mandates in the future. We saw that was here in the state of Louisiana as well. Fortunately, those bills didn't make it out of committee. As of late last week, 9 states have enacted 11 laws with prohibitions on vaccine mandates. Arizona and Arkansas have enacted 2. They weren't all introduced or enacted at this stage of the pandemic. Some were introduced back in February, March, and the most recent took effect in late June. Some of these laws are tied only to vaccinations, have emergency use authorization, so the prohibition will no longer apply if Pfizer and Moderna vaccines get full approval in the U.S. Food Drug Administration. Ugh. Students need to be in classrooms with masks this fall, Education Secretary says. So good news. The U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona has a message for schools across the country. Students need to be in classrooms. So that's very, very good news. We recognize that, but they need to be wearing masks. And so I think that's the big take here, is that masks now are definitively being promoted in the from on a federal level, rules to mandate that. But of course, you're going to have the city like DeSantis is going to be worried, who stated that local districts cannot have mass mandates. It's just like every turn they are making it more dangerous to live in this country, loosening gun laws, making it harder for women to have autonomy over their own body, making climate change changes, sensible climate change changes, no. Sensible gun law restrictions, no. And now sensible public health recommendations, no. And here we're seeing Florida's largest school district is worried about funding after governor bans mask mandates. Florida's largest school district said it's worried about funding if it does not follow Governor DeSantis' executive order preventing the implementation of mask mandates in school. So what do you do? What do you do in this case? That's a case of where we're getting opposite messaging, right? One messaging is from the federal government that mask mandates should occur, and then on a statewide level, we're getting the idea that you cannot wear masks, which is and you cannot mandate for masks, which is crazy. And I think this is a great comment. Sorry, I ask my attorney, the great Scott Galante, regularly about lawsuits about stuff like this, and I don't know. I would imagine they probably can, pointing to the science and then pointing to the fact that the CDC and the health secretary are recommending that this to be the case. So at the end of the article, I think it's this one. At the end of the article, I think that it even actually just says that all DeSantis is doing. I think it's the next one. I have another one on DeSantis. All that they're doing is just playing politics. That's the only thing that's happening here. And so just taking a quick pause here, let me just go through a couple of the other questions. Here it says, when can we see vaccines for more school-age children 5 to 11? Do you think this will make a difference in curbing the pandemic? It's a great question. I do not know. Just largely due to the fact that kids are smaller. Obviously, they're kids, but they have smaller body cavities, pulmonary cavities. Their coughs and their laughs are not as fully. They're not going to be as forceful, and because they're smaller, they're walking in a smaller area. That could be that their virus. They do cough. It'd be a smaller cough as opposed to an adult, and it just would not propel as far. So I don't know how much children have to offer with respect to curbing the pandemic. What I can say for sure is that we don't know when the vaccine for children are going to be released, but it will be somewhere probably in midwinter is what we keep hearing at this point. Fetty asks, what percentage of unvaccinated is under 12 years who probably can't get vaccinated until this winter? That's a very good question. That is a number, I think, 15%. I don't know. I think it's under 20%. I'm almost positive about that. That's a good question. I couldn't tell you right now off the top of my head, but it is a very, very good question. All right, going back to where we were. So essentially, it's just DeSantis is just, what he's doing is just, it's, it can't be better said than here. The CNN that is a corporate news media just looking at DeSantis and finally calling a spade a spade. Here's the headline. Ron DeSantis' priorities on COVID-19 are all screwed up. Florida has become the epicenter of the latest wave of the coronavirus, and on Saturday, the state recorded its most daily cases since the start of the pandemic. And so, I mean, how did Ron DeSantis react to the pandemic? Oh, with an executive order that banned schools from mandating that children wear masks when return for 2021-2022. If I were a parent, if I were a parent in Florida, I'd go if I could. I would get out. I would not send to schools there. It's unbelievable. The CDC recommends that masks be worn indoors by all individuals, who are not fully vaccinated in their back-to-school guidelines. Seen now is that that they are now recommending vaccines to be recommended in schools as well. What I did want to show here is that, except now the Delta variant is running wild in Florida, the state is second in the country with 74 per 100,000 residents, and Louisiana, again, number one in all the wrong lists, 89 cases per 100,000. And why is DeSantis doing this? This is what it looks like when politics and future political ambition crash directly with the political realities of governing a state as large and influential nationally as Florida, and it's not a pretty sight. I could not agree with that more. All right, let's see. We got some good data to show you as well. Super interesting Gallup poll data that I'm going to go over in about just before we go into some of our regular data. So what we're looking at here is so this is a Gallup poll. The Gallup polled Americans. Essentially, how many did they do between July 19th and 26th? Do we have a number here? No, they didn't give us the number that they actually polled. But let's go through this. What did they find? So again, this was still not even where we are today. I think it's even more so today. But the number of people who believe that things are going to get a lot better are significantly declined, and the people who think that things are going to get a lot worse is significantly increased. So there is a lot of pessimism is how I interpret this. People are recognizing, misinformation or not, that things are about to get a lot worse before it gets better. So increased worry in the U.S. about getting coronavirus. You can see that there's a significant increase of people who answer this believe that they are about getting coronavirus. Worry about getting COVID-19 by vaccine. In other words, if you've been vaccinated, how worried are you? People who are vaccinated are still more worried. Look at this, 33% said that they are more worried about getting COVID than 20% of people who are not vaccinated. Oh my goodness, the amount of misinformation that exists. Oh my goodness, I can't even like, my head can't even comprehend it. All right. Now more than ever, now more than in June, say better advice is to stay home as much as possible. Okay, so compared to where we were, how can I move this over? Why is this thing not moving over? Oh, did I cut it off? Oh no, I cut it off. Oh no, I'm so sorry, I cut this off. All right, so what it's saying, so leaf is going down. So basically people are recognizing that even though that these so-called non-pharmacological interventions are super important for us to continue. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that Americans appear to be well aware that the rate of COVID-19 in the U.S. at any time, Gallup previously demonstrated a strong link between changes in infection rates and Americans' assessments of whether the situation was getting better or worse. July brought a new surge in infections, and the spike in cases this summer now exceeds the one seen last summer. Nonetheless, Americans are not ready yet to return to strict social distancing or recommend that the country be shut down. Americans foresee dealing with pandemic disruptions for far longer than they did just a month. So that's pretty good news. Before we move on here, just go quickly that Louisiana shattered records with 11,000 new COVID-19 cases over the weekend. And fortunately, we finally got our mask mandate. We've been calling for it. Louisiana on Monday reinstated a mask mandate in all nations. Finally. All right. So let me just see and clear if there's any questions that need to be cleared real quickly. Let's see, Lizzie, I'm sorry. Lizzie Menore said that Jefferson Parish is allowing families to choose whether to mask at school or not. If I were a parent here in Orleans or in Jefferson Parish, I would not send my children to schools that did not have mandated masking, period. If you are a parent and your school is leaving it up to families as to whether or not they need to mask or not, I would simply said there's no way I would send my kids to a school that did not mandate masking. Ron DeSantis should be held accountable for the loss and medical bills for all those who listen and follow him. 100% agree with you, Tamika. Politicians suffer from extremely low science literacy. Either that or that they're just giving the people what they want to hear. It's unbelievable that what Ron DeSantis is doing with Florida, I agree, is 100% criminal. Replying to Lindsay, Edwards just issued a new mask mandate that includes school, which is yes. So that's good. Okay, I did not realize that it included schools. Thank you for clarifying that for me. And then here, thank you guys so much. Thanks for taking the time on Saturday. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in. We do have about 9 minutes left, so let me get through some of this data just to show you where we're at. Globally, we're about almost at 200 million cases, 4.2, is that right? 4.2 million deaths. We know it's a lot more. 487,818 new cases, 7,403 deaths. So we are starting to, we are seeing what appears to be, I doubt that that's a divot. We'll see. Hopefully that goes down. With deaths about 630,000, rounding up deaths. New cases are 26,558 with deaths of 71. Remember the cases from over the weekend, those numbers are traditionally very, very low. What I do want to show here is that we are seeing a significant uptick in 7-day average. We're still a ways away from hitting that peak, but boy, this is really ugly, as you can see. And this puts us in our first, second, third, maybe fourth wave. I don't know if we call that here. Certainly our fourth or fifth wave here, but you can see cases have gone up by 54.2%, deaths up by 31.6%, hospitalizations by 42.2%, test positivity is 9.4%. So we're not doing nearly enough testing right now. We need to be doing a lot more testing as well. Look at the case rates per 100,000. Case rates are up significantly. We got down at one point to 26.6, but now we're up to 133 per 100,000, which is just an unbelievable number of cases to be up. Here in the U.S., again, we're seeing significant increases in cases. About 50% has been fully vaccinated. We are seeing significant increase in cases, testing, hospitalizations, and deaths as well. Cases by region, Louisiana is way outperforming everybody. You can see here, southern Louisiana, southeastern Louisiana, which is, of course, where I'm broadcasting from, has the hottest and the highest number of cases in the country. This is all being fueled by the Delta variant. This is an incredibly aggressive variant, as we have talked about over and over again. And I agree with Fetty's comment here that the war with COVID is ever changing. It's important to mask up. Absolutely. And again, I was in clinic today. A clinic was double masked. No questions about it. All right. Let's see what else we got here. So we're starting to get ready to land this home. COVID-19, HIV, syndemic. We haven't talked about this in a while. Thank you to the Ryan White Part F for making this show reality. Remember, the same risk factors that lead to HIV are also leading to COVID-19. Here in Louisiana, cases 541,679, with deaths were just a little shy of 11,000 as well. Here you can see in Louisiana, we have actually far surpassed the number of cases that we had in December / February. We had our highest number of cases just a couple days ago. So we are still in the incredible increase in cases as well. Looking at tests are going up, hospitalizations are going up, and number of deaths are going up. Our fully vaccinated is about 37%. And you can see here this heat map hotspots. And again, it's just really southern Louisiana is really just taking a hit. But I'll have you know that the Orleans Parish itself, not so much, but it's everything else around Orleans. And these are a lot of these places are just have some real abysmal rates of vaccinations. When looking at the raw numbers, we're still severe risk level, as you can see. But when compared to when we presented this data on Saturday, we went from 81.9 per 100,000 to 88.6. The infection rate is at about 1.5. So anything above 1 will get us to exponential growth. Test positivity is at 15%, 15.5%. Unbelievable. We really need to get more and more people tested. That number needs to be a lot lower. And then lastly, looking at Orleans Parish, we're still at very high daily case rates. We're now at 72.4 per 100,000. Infection rate is down a little bit, which is good, 1.34. Hopefully with us masking and with social distancing, we'll see that number go lower. Test positivity rate at 13%. So we're still not seeing the best in terms of positivity, but vaccination rates are approaching 60%. So that's really good news as well. So with all that being said, yes, I am doing fine. Thank you, Layla. This is my sounding hoarse. That's just because I've just been talking for the past hour. But I do feel a little hoarse, but I am feeling better. I did get COVID tested. I was tested negative. So for those of you that stayed on, thank you guys so much for appearing, for staying. Folks, please, please get vaccinated. Encourage those that you love around you to be vaccinated. The only way that we're going to, the only way that we're going to get to where we need to go is because of vaccinations and masking. Remember, as the great Dr. Eric Griggs, Director of Community Medicine at Access Health Louisiana, once said, wearing masks, it's not punishment, it's protection, which is Eric's ability to do media the way he does, and the great comments that he comes up with off the cuff like that. He's brilliant that way, and I'm glad he's not here to hear me say that. And don't tell him I said that too. But we will be back on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we're going to likely have Ed Fallon. I was on Ed Fallon's show today. So we'll have Ed Fallon on Wednesday to do the show with. As you guys remember, Ed Fallon is a former recovering politician out of Iowa. He ran for governor a couple times, but was a state senator for many years. He was the first one that challenged Joe Biden when it was candidate Biden on climate change things. And that was the first time Joe Biden said, if you don't like it, you need to go vote for somebody else. So we'll be sure to ask Ed Fallon about that when he's on as well. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, health is a human right. Get checked, get fit, get moving. We appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you so much for all of your support as always. Peace out, everybody.